I think there's definitely ideology at play here for a lot of people. I think there's a generational difference for a lot of people. For Bernie Sanders, it's as close as you're going to get to like a radical position for his demographic.
You have been ahead of the curve on so many of these issues for so long.
Here you go, chatters, you fucking animals, all of you that are like, oh my God, Hasan Minhaj. Hasan Minhaj talked to Bernie Sanders. Can you please watch the Hasan Minhaj? Hasan Minhaj. There you go, dude. Okay, here it is. Here it is, bro. Here, let's listen to what he had to say.
Increasing the minimum wage, free tuition, LGBTQ rights. You've been talking about universal health care since Star Wars A New Hope was in theaters in 1978. Essentially, what you've been doing for the past 40 years is just doing what I do with my kids. Put on your shoes. Hey, put your shoes on. Stop. Put your shoes on. Put your shoes on. Please, for the love of God, put your shoes on.
The health care is a right of all of its people.
That health care is a right of all people. Health care is a right of all people. Health care is a right of all people. Health care is a right of all people.
You've been saying put your shoes on for the past 40 years. Senator Sanders, do you ever feel like blowing your brains out?
Occasionally.
Because my daughter is in the first grade. She hasn't even gotten to the first grade. And
Sounds like you feel like blowing your brains out.
Daily, Senator Sanders.
Don't do it. It's not the solution to the problem. Look.
That was kind of funny, I'm not gonna lie. It was a good, strong start. He just straight up asked Bernie if he wants to kill himself, dude. That's insane. Anyway, let's get back to this.
Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Bernie Sanders. Yeah.
There's almost as many people in the room here as there were last night.
Senator Sanders, do you need a little...
Jane, how's my hair?
Jane?
Oh, you're on?
How's
yes. Yeah, it's fine.
All right.
That's fine.
You know there's a barbershop over there we can get you.
No, I'm not kidding.
I'm not kidding. This is true love. This is real love. This is Sanders, this is real love. Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I want to start by exposing a secret about you. I know this is going to be a little intense, but it's going to shock the conscience of the American public. Senator Sanders, how tall are you?
6 feet. Television makes you short and fat. And for some reason, no matter how I sit, I look fatter than I am. I'm not that fat, folks.
You're not
but
fat.
I am 6 feet.
I'm not fat shaming you. But there is this notion that you're a short king, but you are a tall comrade.
Now that we've gotten through the important stuff.
All right.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to the real stuff.
Yeah.
As someone who has covered the DNC for a long time, I've been there. It's felt electric in a way that I haven't felt in a long time. But I'm also seeing Democratic Party leadership and solidarity like I've never seen before. There's no sneak dissing, there's no disorder, there's no infighting. Progressives and neoliberals arm in arm. Senator Sanders, we had yourself, AOC, and JB Pritzker, a billionaire, all on stage together. So my question to you is, are we witnessing the rise of a more unified Democratic Party, or is this a Donald J. Trump is an existential threat one-off?
Well, it depends. I don't know that we know the answer to that. What I think we do know, which is clear, is that Donald Trump is the most dangerous candidate in perhaps the history of this country. And it's not only...
Bro, there's no... What are we talking about, dude? If there's a unified party on that front, then it's just done. It's lost. There is no, it's just, there is no more progressive wing of the party. We've completely capitulated to the center.
Because of his terrible positions on all of the issues that I'm sure your listeners and viewers are familiar with. He is an authoritarian personality and will move this country in an authoritarian direction, the likes of which, I think it's hard to appreciate. So he's extremely dangerous. And I think what that reality has done is brought a whole lot of people to say, hey, you know what? We got to defeat this guy. We have to.
Biden has the most progressive agenda of any president since FDR. Why are we talking about him like he's Bill Clinton? I'm sure Bernie will address that because Bernie considers himself to be a junior partner that was heard in the Biden administration. Except Biden kind of fucked it up. Biden is a progressive. Yes, Biden on labor was a more progressive administration than Barack Obama. Biden on labor on labor and labor alone, and in terms of how he communicated a lot of these like radical, progressive, you're digging, bro. Oh my God. Dude, I literally said I was not going to vote for him. What? Like, why do you think I have any reason to lie about this? I have said I was not going to vote for him. Oh my God, bro. Like, Biden's labor record is above and beyond in comparison to previous Democratic leadership, especially in recent history, previous Republican leadership, especially in recent history. Okay? You said it 30 minutes ago, lol. Yeah, actually, I'm lying. I'm going to write his name in now. Now that I'm thinking about his record on labor, I'm going to write his name in. So Kamala is more progressive than Biden? Kamala is nothing. We don't know. All we have are her policies, which she surprisingly at this point, confusingly, has none. So I don't know. It's funny because I've said that over and over again. I kept warning people. I was like, listen, 2019 is a different time. She, as a senator, said that, oh God, I was so careful from the jump too. You made striking if you're a rail worker illegal. Oh my God, every time, dude. There's no way that like every single time I talk about Biden's record on labor, there is like a new person who has not heard me speak on this a million times over. Like, that's crazy. RFK Jr. can still win if we vote for him. I agree. It's crazy every time. Every time I bring it up. Stopped applying pressure. Hard fought success on rail sick days. June 20, 2023. After months of negotiations, the IBES Railroad members of four of the largest U.S. freight carriers finally have what they sought long, but many working people take for granted, paid sick days. And they, in this article, say that they're thankful to the Biden admin for playing the long game. And actually, without making a show of it, Joe Biden and members of the administration in the transportation and labor departments work continuously to get guaranteed paid sick days for all railroad workers. Now, it's not a lot. This is why shit like an arms embargo is so important to do immediately, by the way. Every day that passes another day where someone doesn't hear the reversal and walks right into the voting booth thinking Harris still doesn't support an arms embargo, even if she comes out in favor of it. Exactly. But I don't think people understand that. That's why I'm saying, like, you need to immediately hit this on partisan lines. You need to immediately hit this on partisan lines. He still stripped their negotiating power away by removing their ability to strike. I agree. But also, I still refer back to the labor union at this in this instance. And if the labor unions are still happy about it, I'm not going to outflank them. Like, what are we talking about, dude? Oh, do you understand? It's like when chatters come in here and go, dude, we actually shouldn't even be pushing for a ceasefire. We should be pushing for the complete dissolution of the apartheid state. And it's like, I agree with you, but like, how the f am I going to sit here and outflank Hamas on this? You know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about? Getting your demands met without striking is better than striking? No, that's not true. Because if there was a strike, it would have literally crippled the American economy entirely. It would have destroyed everything, which is why the fear of a strike alone should have gotten the railroads to actually make capitulate to the demands. Because when the railroad workers unions strike, like, it's not just like, oh, I'm not getting my Amazon order. Like, it's everything. Okay, people don't get clean water. Okay, like, these guys are carrying chemicals across the nation on railroads that are the chemicals responsible for cleaning your water, like having clean access to clean water supply. They're carrying medication. It would have it would never happen for that reason. That's why some of these like essential parts of the American labor force are unjustifiably locked into these like completely anti-union, completely anti-labor, anti-union rules. That's the chatter's point, though, which is organized labor uses strikes as an unfortunate last resort. No. In this circumstance, they were looking for 14 paid sick leave days, and they got 4, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I suspect they would have gotten 14, and also other additional demands that they had made.
They will let Kamala and Tim to the administration, and we go from there.
Are progressives and liberals, in your opinion, because of this existential threat, finally learning how to work together? Because
Well,
Things were
that's
different.
it's a complicated question. I think what you have is the idea of coalition politics is something that we're not familiar with in the United States. It exists in Europe all over the place. It did recently in France, as you may be familiar with.
Right.
There was a threat of a right-wing movement, Le Pen, similar to Trumpism, and the left, including moderates and center-left and further left people came together and said, we can't allow this to happen in France. So right now we are united in an honest way to defeat Donald Trump. But do not minimize the differences that exist between progressives and corporate Democrats.
In your speech at the convention, you said that you wanted a ceasefire in Gaza.
We must end this horrific war in Gaza, bring home the hostages, and demand an immediate ceasefire.
Huge applause break moment in the United Center. It was pretty amazing. Everyone cheered. It really was a moment. But I want to talk about that word ceasefire. It means something very different for different people. The meaning of that word seems to be changing in real time. Senator Sanders, what is your definition of the word ceasefire?
If you allow me, let me back it up a little bit,
Sure,
and I'll
please.
get there. Okay.
And it's just walking us through.
Yeah.
That's a great question, by the way. It's correct. The Democratic Party, if you follow Adam Johnson, formerly of Fair Media, he talks about this quite a bit. He's written about this on, I believe, The Nation as well, where the definition of the ceasefire is something that the Democratic Party basically changed. When they say they're looking for a ceasefire, they mean something different, right? When the public says we want a ceasefire, they want a cessation of hostilities completely, whereas the Democrats keep saying, "Oh, we're working towards a ceasefire," and it's like originally they used to say a temporary ceasefire, temporary halt. Then they started saying ceasefire, and then obviously the Israeli government's understanding of a ceasefire is very different than the Democratic Party's understanding of a ceasefire. They used to say humanitarian pause. Yeah, remember?
Yeah. Okay. Let's go through with what happened on October 7th. Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, invaded Israel and killed 1,200 innocent men, women, and children, took 200 hostages. They are a terrorist organization. Bad news, guys. Israel responded as any government would respond to an attack like that. Israel had the right to defend itself. But what has happened since then is rather than just go after Hamas, a terrorist organization, what Israel, under an extreme right-wing government led by Benjamin Netanyahu, who has in his cabinet people to the right of him who are out and out anti-Palestinian racist. No ifs, buts, and matters. These are racist. So this is the cabinet. What they have done is say, hey, we're not just going to go after Hamas. We're going to go after the Palestinian people. And the carnage has been horrific. And
I'm going to run this back. I'm sorry. I have to hear it again because I heard him go,
organization invaded and
yeah,
killed
he says
1,200
Hamas, a terrorist
innocent
organization
men,
that
women,
invaded Israel.
children, took 200 hostages. They are a terrorist organization. Bad news, guys. Israel responded as any government would respond to an attack like that. Israel had the right to defend itself.
Boo! No, it doesn't. How can you be a humanitarian and a socialist for your entire life and say something that is patently false, objectively untrue? You are not on the campaign right now. You are simply talking to Hasan Minhaj, okay? There is no reason for you to shelter unless this is like actually what you think, okay? And this is actually what he thinks. He thinks Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel does not have a right to defend itself as a belligerent occupier over Palestinian occupied territories. That's just like, oh.
What has happened since then is rather than just go after Hamas, a terrorist organization.
Like this is rather than just go after Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, is literally the justification that Israel uses. It's not like Israel saying, we are going to kill Palestinians. They're saying we're going after Hamas. Plenty of liberal Zionists also say Israel has a right to defend itself by going after Hamas. Like, it's silly.
What Israel, under an extreme right-wing government led by Benjamin Netanyahu, who has in his cabinet people to the right of him who are out and out anti-Palestinian racist. No ifs, buts, and matter. These are racist. So this is the cabinet where they.
This is not, again, this is not, this is not unique to like Itamar Ben-Gvir, Benjamin Netanyahu, Bezalel Smotrich, okay? This is something that like Israeli society, according to numerous polls since October, specifically, and this is Israel's own designation, the Jewish society in Israel, the Jewish demographic of Israelis have been overwhelmingly in support of, if not demanding more of, okay? If you don't personally come to this conversation with this recognition, then, and you try to single out like individuals, you fail to comprehend the severity of the problem. You literally end up lying by omission. You end up in denial of reality of a country that literally had pro-rape riots. A country where by the latest polling, okay, 66% of them said they didn't want the people who are being investigated for rape to have any criminal trial. And only 21% said they think a trial should take place. That right there is how far out Israeli society is. Now, let me explain something to you. You might be wondering, well, if Israel is so racist, so crazy, why did they even do a trial, or why did they even detain some of these rapists in the Sdei Taman facility to begin with? The answer is simple. It's complementarity, okay? A principle known as complementarity dictates that as long as Israel is prosecuting some of its own war criminals for some of the war crimes that they engage in, then they can use that as a shield to not get prosecuted by the ICC. And that is the reason why they did that. Okay? They have to at least play pretend, like they're playing by the rules, like there is a, okay? That's the reason why they did it. And even then, Israeli society was like, fuck no, we're not doing that shit. Get out of here.
They have done is say, hey, we're not just going to go after Hamas, we're going to go after the Palestinian people. And the carnage has been horrific. And we are looking at the worst humanitarian disaster, one of the worst in modern history. And I've been on the floor talking about this a whole lot. So it's not just 30,000, they got a population there in Gaza, 2.2 million, 30,000 dead, mostly women, children, and the elderly.
Hasan, nobody in the U.S. politics is going to do anything about Palestine. You being pro-Palestine, what's the point of talking about elections, let alone siding with Kamala? I know this is basically your job, but it still doesn't sit well. All right, take a week off and really matriculate. Let that sit in your mind a little bit, and then come back with like a normal ass attitude.
Over 80,000 injured, mostly women, children, and the elderly.
Yes.
You got 1.8 million people, 3/4 of the population displaced. You got it? Taken out of your home.
Yeah.
Oh, and then you moved again, and then you moved again. And it's a young population, a lot of children. Okay? You got 65% of the housing damaged or destroyed. Got that?
Right.
So we don't know where these people are going to go back to. There are 12 universities in Gaza. Guess what? Every single one of them has been bombed. They had a fairly decent healthcare system, systematically destroyed. Very few functioning hospitals right now. You got no electricity in Gaza right now. And then as a result of Israel's efforts to deny humanitarian aid, to block humanitarian aid, you're now looking at the possibility of mass starvation, and children right now are malnourished. And
I don't think Israel should be going on the offensive, but I think you lose a lot of people saying they have no right to defend themselves after losing civilians. 10 months of doing so is obviously not a defense anymore, though, of course. Oh, my expectations from Bernie Sanders is higher because he is one of the only politicians in American politics, as a prominent Jewish politician, that has actively talked about conditional weapons transfers to Israel far before October 7. Even talking specifically about like denying any, putting sanctions or denying any aid to Israel whatsoever. Okay. What is shocking to me is that he keeps repeating falsehoods. October 7 is the first time this ever happened. October 7 is when, Hamas, a terrorist cell, waged war on Israel. This is an abject denial of reality. Okay? What do I mean by this? It is an abject denial of reality because Hamas is not born out of like Jew hatred, okay? Or born out of anger and resentment. It's born out of a genuine need for resistance against an apartheid regime, okay? So saying like, oh, well, on October 7th, they did this, and then Israel had a right to defend itself, literally just rips away necessary context in this equation, okay? That's it. That's why I'm very frustrated, because the necessary context is 75, at that moment, 75 years of ethnic cleansing and apartheid. If you don't understand that, then yeah, you're like, whoa, what the f***? Why'd they do that? Shit was so neat on October 6th. It wasn't, okay? It wasn't. And I understand as a prominent politician, like what you can say and what you can't say, okay? But there's a better way to you know, not engage in any kind of apartheid denial. Do you understand? Does not justify war crimes by either side. Man, shut up. I never said that, okay? You're just advocating against a position that I do not hold. Analysis does not mean justification. Shut the f*** up. But you have to come at it with a level of understanding that, like, yeah, obviously people are going to resist against an apartheid. Like, what are you talking about? That's the problem here, okay? And while on October 7, there were Palestinian resistance groups that engaged in actions that can be accounted or that can amount to terror, okay? Like targeting civilians, killing civilians, okay? This kind of shit is, understandably, it's what terrorism would be considered, okay? The reality of the matter is, by and large, these actions did not stem from anti-Semitism. That is the pro-Israel argument. And none of that justifies Israel's retaliation reaction, and none of that justifies what Israel was doing before October 7. Oh, being a resistance group has to do with your reason for existence, not purity of action. Yes. And by the way, post October 7, and I've openly stated this time and time again, consistently saying Hamas are terrorists, actually also, once again, works to favor Israel's actions, okay? You're laundering Israeli propaganda because Hamas, as a violent resistance group, is currently in a defensive posture against a belligerent occupier. They have the right to kill IDF soldiers in Gaza, okay? Israel, on the other hand, is in violation of international law when they're bombing Gaza. Do you understand? Same goes for the Jenin Brigade. The same principle applies if you want to look at it, not even from morality, but simply on international law, on the basis of international law. They have a right to defend themselves. That's it. That's literally it. I know that this sounds ridiculous because, you know, we have this idea that like we are infallible beings of good in the world and our allies are doing the same thing, but that is not the reality.
When you're a child, malnourished, that's permanent. I mean, you may not necessarily die. It'll impact your...
The dude in this tweet is labeled a terrorist. He's a militia leader in the West Bank, but the quote perfectly encapsulates what you're saying. I can't stay home waiting for a bulldozer to demolish the home over my head. No, I have to destroy the bulldozer before it gets to me. Yeah. Resistance will continue. Life and legacy of Muhammad Jabir Abu Shuja. If the enemy assassinates me, we will continue. The struggle does not end with one person. There are generations that rise to defend our rights. On July 26, 2024, Palestinian crowds rescued Abu Shuja from Tabet Governmental Hospital in Tulkarem after the Palestinian Authority's security forces attempted to arrest him while he was being treated for injury. Oh, it's back. It's back. That's f***ing annoying. God, I hate this shit. What happened? Said full network error. I don't know. I just had now the viewership is down. Time for Wukong. 27-month subscriber. Take a week off. Yes, I'm going to be watching the Kamala Harris interview tonight. Anyway. The point is, this is why people say the Palestinian Authority is an arm of Israeli security, which it is. That's how they operate. Let's get back to Bernie Sanders. I can't believe I just like went through so many different, dude, there is no way that I went from 35,000 to 17,000. What the f is going on, dude?
Intellectual development.
Anyway.
Emotional development. So you got a horror show. Now, what
wild.
bothers me, I would hope that bothers anybody.
Of course.
But what is even worse is a lot of this is being done with U.S. taxpayer dollars. So what I have insisted on from day one, and one of the few, is to say, you know what? Not another nickel to Netanyahu's extremist government to continue the war against the Palestinian people.
So what you're saying is the October 7 attack was an unjustified terrorist attack, but Israel, first of all, that's not what I'm saying at all. But Israel has no right to fight back, even if it's just one, specifically against Hamas, because they deserved it. But the Hamas attack is still unjustified. No. This is a very nuanced and nothing burger position. Did the U.S. have any right to fight Al-Qaeda after 9/11? Then in what capacity? Wait, what? You say yourself that America deserved 9/11? Wait, what are you... I can't tell if you're in agreement with me or if you think that you're disagreeing with me, but while you're simultaneously agreeing with me. Israel set the standard and conditions for October 7 to happen. Many Israeli officials recognized that ahead of time and literally said that October 7, or a likely scenario like October 7, could potentially happen if Israel continued increasing the pressure on the West Bank, okay, which they did. Israel also personally moved military units away from the Gaza envelope near the border wall to the West Bank in an effort to conduct purges and pogroms in the West Bank. These were all of the major reasons as to how October 7 happened. Israel is mostly responsible for October 7. That is not a position I've strayed away from. That doesn't change the reality that October 7 had a litany of atrocious actions that took place, including mass death of civilian casualties, okay? Having said that, however, yes, Israel had no right to retaliate against Hamas, okay? Israel should have, just like the United States of America should have, I think post 9/11, not done all the shit that they did. Perhaps done the opposite of what they did, okay? It shouldn't take 11 months and genocide for many people to come to the conclusion that there is no military solution to Hamas. Hamas is just a name, okay? What they are doing is resisting against an apartheid. If it's not Hamas, it's going to be Hamas too. As a matter of fact, Hamas itself is originally not a violent resistance group, okay? So an Islamic charity that turned into a violent resistance group. Ridiculous. I usually agree with you, but I don't think doing nothing was an option either. No, doing something was dealing with Hamas politically, okay? They made their demands known immediately after October 7. They wanted to do a transfer of hostages in Israeli prisons. They wanted to import for Gaza so they could actually trade and a bunch of other shit. That was the reason. That's what they demanded. They haven't really strayed away from those demands since October 7. Israel should have immediately gone to the table and been like, all right, let's do it. Let's do something. Let's deal with this a little bit better than the way that we are going to deal with it. Of course, that was never going to happen. That was never going to happen. Israel immediately started bombing literally before they even rid Israel proper of any kind of resistance forces inside of their own boundaries. You're being idealistic if you think they would ever handle it that way. I'm not saying that that was going to be the likely scenario. I'm simply telling you what they should have done. What are you talking about? What kind of relitigation of events are we having here? You ask me what you think should have happened. I'm telling you what I think should have happened. Then you go, oh, they would never do that. I know that, dumbass. I know that because they didn't do that. And what they ended up doing was immediately start bombing Gaza before they even purged their own, like before they even maintained security internally inside of Israel proper. They started bombing Gaza. They started bombing their own citizens in the kibbutzim.
As we speak, there's more military aid going to Netanyahu, and I'm going to do my best to block it. Do I think we'll win? No. But there is a provision that you have to block that kind of military aid, and I will do my best to block it.
As I read and internalize the news, they're giving me these updates on the negotiations, and it feels almost like the iTunes user agreement, where it's, we all want a ceasefire, but ceasefire if, ceasefire but. Help me understand now.
Well,
Is
I
it
can't.
conditional or
I
unconditional?
mean, look, you're asking a very fair.
Chad, did he game earlier? Because why the viewers so low? I had a I had a 5-minute F, and it's Jover after that point. It's not because I'm gamed. Shut up. Yeah, I mean, every other day there's more information like this, obviously. IDF knew more than it was disclosed about impending attack on JIT, sources reveal. IDF doubles down that it was only given general warnings.
Question.
Okay.
And it's just not, I have not been involved day-to-day ceasefire.
I gotta go
so
watch
it's a
my
good
hands.
question. Don't know the answer. All that I do know.
Can you help me frame this?
Well, sure. I mean, look, if you're Hamas, right? What do you want? If you want a ceasefire, which I suspect they may want it. You want to protect your interests as best you can. If you're Israel, you want to minimize or diminish Hamas to the degree you can. So I suspect within that framework, that's what these discussions are about.
Do you feel the U.S. has a role as a neutral broker between these two sides?
U.S. is not a neutral broker. U.S. is significantly supporting the Netanyahu government.
Okay.
Not neutral, but I think, and what we focus rightfully so on Gaza, but I hope everybody understands there's another part. There's the West Bank, where you're seeing unprecedented vigilantism against Palestinian landowners and homeowners as well. So look, the role that the United States can play is Israel has been dependent on U.S. financial support and military support for a long time. And what we have got to say to them, if you want another nickel, sorry, this is the way it's going to be. At the very least, there's going to be a Palestinian state. Palestinian people need their own political and economic entity. And we are not going to be providing you any more weapons so long as you are going to war against the Palestinian people.
You're obviously in the Senate. Let's talk about the House. Back in April, there was a bill to approve billions in military aid for Israel that went through Congress. Out of the roughly 200 House Democrats, only 37 voted against military aid. So just so folks understand kind of the way the voting works, over 80% of House Democrats
And virtually
good.
all Republicans, I would imagine.
correct?
Yeah.
We're good on sending
Yeah.
aid. Okay. Yesterday, I was at the United Center. You say the word ceasefire, incredible applause break. So what I'm hearing at the convention is from the Democratic Party is yay ceasefire, and simultaneously from 80% of those members of Congress, I'm also hearing yay weapons.
The convention is, thousands of people. It's a small number of people.
Right.
If you do polling today, I think if you ask a simple question and you say, do you think your taxpayer, American taxpayer dollars, should go to support the Netanyahu government and the continuation of the war? I suspect a pretty strong majority of Americans would say, no, I don't. And among Democrats, the numbers would be very high. So if your question is Congress, I think your question is, reflecting where the American people are at?
Correct.
The answer is no, they're not.
Why is that?
Well, it is the same answer that I would give you if you asked me, gee, how come every other major country on earth has healthcare as a human right and we don't? And polls show that the majority of the American people want healthcare as a human right. How come we don't tax billionaires?
Here's a good question. What would the reaction been if the USA did nothing after 10/7? Even if we don't like it, Israel's a steadfast American ally. Can we literally just ditch an ally like that? Wouldn't that be a horrible look? What was America supposed to do? I'm not calling for the continued support, but didn't they have to do something? No. On October 10, after meeting with Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, Anthony Blinken literally called for restraint on Israel's actions, okay, in a tweet, and then immediately deleted it. They knew back then what the Israel was going to do. Okay, everybody with eyes with a brain knew exactly what Israel was about to do. You're out of your mind, dude. What do you mean? F America. What the f is this? Oh, well, it would have been a bad look, dude. It would have been a real bad look if America didn't do nothing for Israel, dude. Yeah, totally. The optics, dude. What are you talking about? How about the real bad look? America can't even look like it can restrain its own attack dog in the goddamn region and keeps funneling endless weapons to its attack dog in the region, which is an objectively fascist, bloodthirsty, monstrous, NC-style, Nazi Germany-style country at this point. What do you think is a bad look? Reasonable elder statesmen understanding exactly what Israel's going to do and then like trying to calm the tensions, or giving a bear hug to a Nazi demon like Netanyahu and then letting him run rampant in the region? Bad look. That's crazy. Trump is live? What do you... Bro, I don't give a shit. I mean, Trump. Yeah. Bernie Sanders' position on it right now is that this is like a unique problem with Benjamin Netanyahu. That should be the position of like, I don't know, most of the Democratic Party at this point. Bernie should be far above that, openly saying this is an apartheid. It's ridiculous. It should not exist in the way that it does. Your favorite response? What is this? If you say America, why do you live in the USA? Hasan, can I link you an article? We're trying to start encampments and we would love your support. I am not sub. I can't do it. If you say America, how can you on the one, like it, that makes no sense. This person is literally going, I want to do encampments Okay, would love your support. And then simultaneously being like, if you say, fuck America, why do you live in the USA? Why do you want to start an encampment? Bernie was saying the whole cabinet under Netanyahu was racist, not just Netanyahu himself. Oh.
At a higher rate when the American people think we should. And the answer to all of those questions is the same. And I tried to talk about that a little bit last night. It is the role of money in politics. So right now, both major political parties, Democrats and Republicans, are funded very heavily by the wealthiest people in this country. And if you were a billionaire and you wanted to start a super PAC, you could put hundreds of millions of dollars into campaigns to defeat people who opposed you and to support your friends who will support your agenda.
2 out of those 37 House members.
Chad, I ran the 3-minute ad break when I was offline, like, or when I lost connection. Like, it was one of the things I did. Probably the reason why so many people left too. They thought, oh, it's over. The stream is done.
That voted against the weapons bill were Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush.
That's right.
They recently lost their primaries. Why did they lose their primaries?
Well, that's good. And they lost their primaries because a super PAC, AIPAC, put an unprecedented amount of money. I was involved in both of their campaigns. Jamal's more than Cori's, but we helped Cori raise money. And the reason is the billionaire class does not want strong opposition to the billionaire agenda. And in Jamal, you had somebody who was strongly opposed to it. And it's not just on Israel, where his views were not probably dissimilar to mine or Cori's, but on other issues as well. So what you got, and let me repeat this because it's not talked about enough. Yeah, do we have a democracy? Yes, you can go out and vote. That's great. And please, everybody, go out and vote. But what most of you cannot do is put hundreds of millions of dollars into a super PAC to elect candidates you want or defeat candidates you don't like. So there's a super PAC out there. They went after Jamal in an unprecedented way, defeated him. Went after Cori, defeated her. And that is the power of money in politics. And that is why it is absolutely imperative that we get rid of this disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United and move to public funding of elections.
Right.
This is just money. Look, it is not complicated. If you are, this gentleman over here, probably not, you're a billionaire, and you didn't like Bernie Sanders, or you don't like Cori Bush, you don't like Jamal Bowman, you can start a super PAC, Friends of America, call it whatever you want. You could take out a check, put $500 million into that check, get a few of your friends to contribute, and you go after them, put ads on TV. That's legal. That's what Citizens United allows us to do. Nothing conspiratorial about it. That is the reality of American politics.
I think Bernie's awareness of DMFI's Democratic Majority for Israel, chatter, for those of you who don't know, and steady support of Israel shows that this really is deeply ideological and not a political strategy. Yeah, I think so. I think there's definitely ideology at play here for a lot of people. I think it's just social conditioning for a lot of people. I think there's a generational difference for a lot of people. I think for Bernie Sanders, it's as close as you're going to get to like a radical position for his demographic. I mean, that's not entirely true. I mean, obviously there's people who are far more aggressive in their and far more reasonable, I would say. Aggressive, but also reasonable in terms of their criticism of Israel. Noam Chomsky comes to mind. Obviously Norm Finkelstein comes to mind. Yeah, Gabor Mate, Jeremy Corbyn, Ilan Pape. There are plenty of people who have arrived at the correct position, but ultimately I do sometimes think that Bernie Sanders has somewhat of an emotional investment. He has no problem with Israel as a state, but he hates the role it plays in American politics as he does with any moneyed special interest. Fair to say. I think that is no. I think he has a problem with Israel as a state. I don't think he has a problem. Saying that he has no problem with Israel as a state is false. I think he wants Israel to be a more tolerant state, a state that will like I don't think he has a. I've never heard him, for example, say Israel has to be a Jewish ethnic majority state. You know what I mean? Like, I think that as a Jewish American who is a socialist, a lifelong socialist, I think he believes in two secular states, right? Which is naive at this point. Not even naive, but I think basically a denial of reality. Like he believes in this like utopian Israel that has never existed and will never exist. And I think that's where ideology comes into play. Does that make sense? You got your wish. Breaking news. Joe Biden calls for an arms embargo and Kamala Harris separates herself from Joe Biden by saying she will personally take up arms and storm Gaza on foot. You idiot. Yeah. Kamala Harris is riding with Israel. Joe Biden no longer with Israel. Joe Biden says he's sending in NATO to invade Israel. Kamala Harris says she will defend. Kamala Harris says she will defend. She will do a people's revolution to defend Israel from Joe Biden and NATO. He's kind of obsessed with the early labor socialist propaganda of Zionist Israel, like the kibbutzim, the Soviet art, the worker union. He just misses the whole point where Israel isn't real. It's just nostalgia goggles. Yeah, I think so. Like that's where the ideological division comes into mind, I think. Maybe Bernie's like my 19-year-old brother who's been to Israel 3 times now and identifies as a labor Zionist. That's so funny. Like it makes sense for Bernie to have that position. Your 19-year-old brother should not have that position. That's like 3 total people in Israel, dude. Like Bernie's generation is the last time such an ideology existed. You know that, right? How the does a 19-year-old arrive at that conclusion? Like it is an ancient ideology at this point. Labor Zionism is the most dead. That's so funny. That's cool. I've tried to explain it to him and he's too history nerd pilled. Okay, but like, does he not realize? Does he not realize that that's not like a thing that happens anymore? Like what's the Labor Party look like in Israel currently, for example? You should ask him about that. Labor Zionist is about as dumb as MAGA communists. No, there was a point where it was a real thing. It's just so funny that like it is completely perished. Anyway, the one guy you interviewed is one, but yeah, which guy? No. The people that I interviewed are not labor Zionists. They're anti-Zionists. Ofer Kasif is not a labor Zionist. He is what? He's literally an anti. No, Ofer Kasif is not a labor Zionist, chat. What the f? He's a communist and an anti-Zionist. What are you talking about? He literally said, Zionism, he said anti-Zionism is the moral position. Anti-Semitism is a crime. Anti-Zionism is morality. You know who is a labor Zionist? One of the only sitting Israeli politicians, the current president of Israel. He's a labor Zionist. You guys should check out his opinions on miscegenation.
That's going on in both political parties. Check out the amount of money that billionaires are now contributing both to the.
Einstein kind of was one, yes. Except at that time, even at that time, with the rose-tinted glasses that many labor Zionists were looking at Israel as a nation-state project, Einstein was one of the few people immediately who was like, "Oh, this shit is fascist, bro. Don't do this." He literally said, "Don't do this. This is some straightforward fascism." Yeah.
Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And that will answer your question, I think, not only about the war in Gaza, it's why we don't have healthcare as a human right, why we have massive income and wealth inequality, why we have a corrupt tax system, why we are not able to send our kids to college and make it affordable, et cetera, et cetera. It's money. Money talks.
I want to talk about your career in politics. You have been propping open the Overton window for the past 40 years. And 8 years ago, a bunch of my friends were just hunched over a laptop on Reddit, vaping, on their phones, just going, you know what? This guy makes a lot of sense. Does it ever get exhausting seeing how slow it takes for the electorate to eventually catch up to ideas that feel so basic?
They feel basic, but there's an idea that I think people don't comprehend, is that the people on top have enormous power. Just think, I'm a little bit older than you.
I think the American left have ideological issues mainly because of where they live, but even in Western imperial countries like France, the left, Mélenchon and his party refused to condemn the October 7 attack. I don't know. No, it's America is on overdrive. We don't do normal imperialism. Like, we are the imperial core, we are the empire, we are the power. Okay? And we have no robust, active, working left-wing politics. Okay? We don't have any real left politics in this country. That's not a thing. I'm crying. What is labor Zionism, please? It's one of the many ways in which early Zionists tried to package Israel, the Israeli project, as like a socialist project, okay? A pro-labor socialist project, a utopia. They told the religious people that Israel had a religious reason for existing. They told the socialist Jews that this was a socialist project. Basically, whoever the wanted, the goal basically was to just get as many Jews as possible to what was going to become Israel. Okay? So that's it. They were like, oh, come on, we have kibbutz. Like, you can do a communal space where you can live your socialist life. Bernie Sanders did live in one of the kibbutzim, actually. The USSR early on was also pro-Israel too. And at that point, especially with a lack of access to like immediate information, it was a little bit more understandable that people were personally invested in this project because they just didn't really know what it was about. But those who were paying close attention to it, like even Einstein himself. So if Einstein was a socialist and he was against this idea, what part made him call it fascism? He wrote a letter. He was supposed to be the first president of Israel. He wrote a letter. I think it was on the New York Times at the time, where he basically said, labor Zionism seems like a good idea in theory, but the way that it's being practically applied is an ethno-state, and you can't have an ethno-state. That is fascism. He was right. That's why it's funny, like when you think about it with today's lens, Einstein would be considered an anti-Zionist. Yeah, Einstein didn't believe in an Israeli state. He believed in Jews living in Palestine.
So when I was a kid, people of your color couldn't drink at a water fountain in Mississippi. Okay?
Yeah.
Go to segregated schools.
Yeah, look. 1948, New York Times publishes letter by Einstein, other Jews accusing Menachem Begin of fascism. Lest America be fooled by post-independence rhetoric, the Herut party Begin led was closely akin to the Nazi and fascist parties, they wrote. On December 4th, 1948, the New York Times published a letter by a group of Jewish dignitaries, including Albert Einstein and the political theorist Hannah Arendt, protesting a visit to the United States by Menachem Begin and denouncing his Herut Freedom Party on the grounds that it was, as they wrote, a political party closely akin in its organization, methods, political philosophy, social appeal to the Nazi and fascist parties. For your information, Noam Chomsky was definitely pro-Israel in its inception. He also spent time at a kibbutz, but realized this dream came at the expense of Palestinians. Oh, yeah. There are plenty of people who originally were Zionists themselves. Gabor Mate is another example of this. Plenty of people, like, I mean, people who survived the Holocaust, you know what I mean? Of course, they were like, oh my God, this is so promising. This seems like a great idea. This seems like a great idea. Okay? And then they were like, oh my God, this is fascist. It's not such a great idea. Are you bothered by the far-right support for Palestine, by that people are blatantly anti-Semitic? There are far more anti-Semites on the far-right support for Israel than the far-right fake support for Palestine. So those guys hate Muslims as well as hating Jews. As a matter of fact, the far-right is more divided on Israel for that reason. They're like, oh, but they are killing Muslims, though, and that's kind of sick. There's like, for every 3 Nazis that are like pro-Palestinian but anti-Semitic, there are a ton more. There are hundreds more Nazis who are pro-Israel and also anti-Semitic. Thousands more, if not millions more. For the one Nicholas Fuentes, you have every evangelical Christian in the South sitting inside of a goddamn megachurch every Sunday thinking that Jews have horns and tails, while simultaneously saying, yeah, those horned Jews with their tails should go to the desert and live there so that Jesus Christ can come back to earth, fight the devil in Megiddo, and that we can get sucked into the heavens, and all of those Jewish people will then, of course, die in eternal damnation in hell because they didn't convert to evangelical Christianity. So, you know, you tell me, you tell me what I think about the far-right support for Palestine in that regard. I mean, fuck those guys. And I shit on them regularly. The people that are like constantly trying to sneak in anti-Semitism in their anti-Zionist sentiment. Like, imagine looking at a genocide and being like, ooh, let me use my pet project. Let me try to focus people on what truly matters, okay? Hating random Jews. Great. Thanks. Like, deeply unserious, pathetic losers. Ironic because, once again, Zionism is a fascist ideology, and therefore, given that Zionism is a fascist ideology, they hate that, like, Israel gets to do what they want to do here in the United States of America for white people,
etc. It took God knows how long for people to stand up and fight against segregation and racism. It took a very long time. People died in the struggle.
Can you explain why there are more Jews in New York than Israel itself? There aren't more Jews in New York than Israel itself. New York City, however, is you're mistaken. There aren't more Jews in New York than Israel itself. New York City, however, used to be the largest Jewish city. I believe Tel Aviv is now the largest Jewish city on the planet. Ultimately, America has, I believe, the same number of America as a nation has the same number of Jewish people. Chatter is mistaken. U.S. has more Jews than Israel, but not New York by itself. Exactly. And that number is like pretty close too. If you count secular Jews, the U.S. and not just the state of New York has more Jews than Israel. Yes, of course we're counting secular Jews as well. And yes, the United States of America, not New York, but the United States of America has, I believe, more Jewish people than Israel. Yes. Which is why it's like ridiculous when Biden says, if it wasn't for Israel, not a single Jew would be safe. 7.2 million Jews live in Israel. 6 million Jews live in the United States, I believe. I think it's like 7 and 7. Not really. U.S. has 51% of the Jewish population. Those identifying as Jews above all else was estimated at 50.7 million. Israel hosts the largest core Jewish population in the world with 7.2 million, followed by the United States with 5.7 million. I mean, I thought it was like 6 and 6, and then the rest living in like Europe and shit. The percentage of eligible Jewish population that is living in each country. Oh, wait, what? Why does it say Israel is 30%? That's not true. I'm pretty sure it's 7 and 7. Anyway, not that it fucking matters. As a Jew, I'd rather people not keep count, to be honest. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But also, beyond that, what is really stupid about this conversation, once again, is that when Biden, who is presiding over the United States of America, American presidency, okay, is literally like the president of more Jews than Israel, okay, saying that without Israel there would be no safe place for Jews is a threat. It's including descendants in that figure. I believe that's why it says eligible. Oh, that can also miscount. I qualify for birthright and immigration, but I don't identify primarily Jewish in the USA. Core versus eligible, maybe eligible meaning those who will qualify for Israel birthright law. Wait, what? How does that make sense? Eligible for Aliyah? But like, that doesn't make sense. I don't understand. Okay, I'm done counting Jews, man. This seems weird. Okay, I'm done. It feels weird. It's a weird thing to do. Okay. Other people did it. It didn't turn out good. Okay. It was very bad. We're done with that. They count Jewish people differently in different countries. Himbo moment. Also, it's additionally funny because Nazis don't care about who's Jewish. That's why all of those lists that they have, they will always have like, this is random and stupid. Okay. But those lists that they have that like Kanye West used to print out and like bring around, we looked into that list back in the day when he was like waving that shit around. And that list, literally half of the people in the list wasn't even Jewish. It was suspected Jew, which is insane. Yeah, no, it's like Jewish in spirit, suspected Jew.
And sheriffs going out there and they shot people and they lynched people. You know, there's a movie on Emmett Till and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's photos of you marching in the civil rights movement. Yeah.
My point is, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but in the real world, when you take on people with power, they don't fold up and they don't say, you know, Hasan, you made a good point. Hey, we're going to provide health care to all people. Geez, why didn't I think of that? I'm a smart guy. It doesn't work like that. These people have power and they have money and they're extremely greedy.
You're telling me a witty, top pinned comment can't take down the billionaire class.
Well, it
What are you
takes,
doing?
yeah, but it takes, you have to think that one through. Taking down the billionaire class ain't easy. They own the media, all right? You know, they have enormous power in both political parties. They are very, very powerful people. So that you don't win and change the world overnight, well, I'm sorry, that's the bad news. It doesn't happen. It didn't happen in the civil rights movement. You know, women, I mean, I can remember, it wasn't so many years ago, this is true. I mean, this is how quickly your generation may not know this. But not so many, a few decades ago, in the United States Senate, 100 people, there were 2 women, 98 men, 2 women. The idea of somebody like Kamala Harris running for president, a woman, a black woman, people literally would have said to you,
Bernie.
"You are absolutely crazy. That ain't ever going to happen in 100 years."
Right.
All right. My point is, change happens. We have got to make that change happen faster. But anyone who thinks it happens overnight, it doesn't. You have friends, I suspect, who are gay, right? 30, 40 years ago, people didn't talk about being gay. Now you have a Secretary of Transportation who is gay. You've got governors who are gay.
Right.
All right, that didn't happen by accident. People fought and struggled.
Senator Sanders, unfortunately, this position has been framed in, I believe at times you've been framed in the media as this kind of radical person.
Good point.
But I want to talk about your Guardian article, because what you did is you conducted your own research and you showed that these progressive policies are actually super popular, 10 toes on the ground. This is not a Twitter position. This is not an Instagram stories position. Real IRL Americans care about these issues. How much of a gap do you think is there between your platform in 2020, these issues that we talk about that we feel are common sense, and the Harris-Walz platform of 2024?
Well, they don't have a platform yet. They're working on it. You know, in fairness, and it's an important point to make, she has been a candidate now for all of a month.
Right.
Can you imagine what fell on her shoulders? I mean, having to organize the campaign. She got a lot of folks from Biden's campaign, but, you know, to organize that, to plan out the rallies that you have to do, to plan out the convention that is now taking place, to select a vice presidential candidate, to work on policy stuff. I mean, that is a lot to do in a month, and I think she's been doing a very good job. What I will say, and I want to pick up on the point you made and amplify it.
About the Guardian article.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. What we did,
Please do, because I ran out of free articles, so I didn't get to read all of it. I stopped halfway through.
what we did is we said, look, I'm called a far left guy, right? Trump has the
By the way, XY Geek, you earlier said Likud polls his largest party for the first time since October 7, Netanyahu favored over Gantz. And you literally tweeted this with, congratulations, he should thank Iran, okay? Despite Gaza, Netanyahu's topping the polls in Israel again, he should thank Iran. No, he should thank Joseph Robinette Biden for allowing him this lifeline to continue this genocide, which the people were begging for, okay? No, that's the title. Oh, I guess they changed it maybe? I don't know. Or maybe it was the Haaretz article, but regardless, this is a stupid ass analysis. He should thank Iran is just liberal Zionist garbo, okay? Straight up. The only reason why his popularity is increased is because he utilized the genocide to stay in power, and he gave people exactly what people wanted.
decided that Kamala Harris is a communist. I mean, totally insane. So we asked the American people a lot of simple questions about some of the major issues facing this country, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. So we said, do you think that the wealthy and large corporations should pay more in taxes? Shock of all shocks, over 70% of the American people said yes, including a majority of Republicans. Should we be surprised? No.
No.
All right.
Yeah, of course.
Question, should we raise Social Security benefits by lifting the cap on taxable income and extend life by 75 years? In other words, asking the wealthy to contribute more into Social Security. Over 70% of the people said yes. Should we raise the minimum wage to a living wage? American people overwhelmingly said yes. Should we expand Medicare? Right now, Medicare is a good program. It doesn't cover dental, hearing, and vision. Should we expand it? Over 70%. In all these instances, a majority of Republicans. So your question, I think, is if the American people feel that way, Why, A, haven't we done it? Why aren't people?
Yeah, why haven't they been implemented?
And the answer,
The
answer gets back to what I said a moment ago. It's money. The insurance companies don't like the idea. The rich don't like the idea of paying more in taxes. The insurance companies don't like the idea of expanding Medicare.
Is there a realistic path for my generation to remove money from politics? Is this something?
Goddamn right there is.
You think so?
Yeah.
I'm
I mean, what
38.
you got to do.
Hopefully, I have a long way to go.
All right. The answer is, of course, there is. This money has always played a role in politics, but it was greatly accentuated by this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. So we need legislation to get rid of Citizens United and to move to public funding of elections. If you do that, there will no more be super PACs. Billionaires will not be able to play the role they're playing right now. And again, not a radical idea. Mm-hmm. This exists in many other countries around the world.
I hope we do change it, and I hope we do remove money from politics, because we still don't have Medicare for all. Minimum wage is still at $7.15, which is crazy. When I worked at Safeway in 2003 in Davis, California, I think I was $7.25, and we are still paying other countries to bomb civilians. I want to ask you about your legacy and what you represent in American politics. Do you ever feel like you failed because these things haven't happened? No. Or do you feel like a success because these things are now part of the regular conversation?
Well, I'm sure you're familiar with people like Pramila Jayapal and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Maxwell Frost and many others. Look, what is, again, an untold story. In the Congress right now, and I just saw Pramila this morning, actually, is there are almost 100 members of the Progressive Caucus, and a significant number of them are young, often women, people of color. That's a revolution. Never, ever, ever have you had more progressives who are fighting to transform this country in profound ways. Never before have there been that many in the House of Representatives. That isn't true in the Senate. We don't have that in the Senate. But in the House, that exists. And I'm proud that my two campaigns have gotten a lot of people to say, you know what, I think I can run. What Bernie is saying makes sense to me. That's an agenda that I think I'm going to run for office. Not only for
how powerful is that?
Oh, my goodness.
How much can Congress change the fate of the country and the way money is moved through the country?
They can pass legislation which gets money out of politics. That's what I'm saying. You can pass legislation. Super PACs are not biblical. They're not inherent. You can get rid of them tomorrow if you had the legislation to do it, and that's what we've got to do.
I have so many friends that were Bernie or bust. And when you didn't win in 2016 or 2020, they bust. They checked out of politics, and then they hard pivoted into Bitcoins.
Wow, really?
Then they pivoted into ketamine and Zyn. Let's see where that goes. But they are despondent. Jokes aside, they're despondent, Senator Sanders. Where does that leave your supporters that saw so much hope in the values you were espousing? And what do you say to my friends who now feel like you may be falling in line a little bit too much with the corporate Democratic establishment?
Well, look, at this particular moment in history, and perhaps in any moment in history, despair is not an option. To say, well, I supported Bernie, he didn't win, I'm going into Bitcoin. Sorry, not good enough. All right.
That's going to be your most controversial statement of this whole interview.
All right. There is a reality out there. And the reality is that Donald Trump is not only an authoritarian person, he is a xenophobe. He tries to divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born. You're familiar with the Muslim ban, to say the least, and so forth and so on. So I think, not to mention a dozen other issues. So I think if you are a human being who wants to live in a sane and decent society, who is concerned about your kids, you know what? Sorry, you don't have a right to check out. That's a privilege you don't have.
It's a massive Wukong update. You might want to get that started in the background. It's probably fixing that glitch, but it's not showing for me. There's a glitch that gives you like unlimited mana.
You're gonna have to do what people historically have done. I just came from a meeting an hour ago with the trade unionists. There was a time in this city where union people, I'm talking 100 years ago, were beaten up because they wanted to join a union. They were denied food. They were thrown out when they went out on strike. And they stood up and they fought so that people can earn a decent standard of living. Women didn't have the right to vote. They didn't have property rights. They stood up and they fought back.
And it was great.
So now we have today a woman who rests on the shoulders of those women who struggled for 100 years. You have a civil rights movement. Dr. Martin Luther King was here in the city, fighting for justice. got shot trying to organize work with workers. So people say, oh my goodness, my candidate didn't win, I'm dropping out, even though the candidate was made. Sorry, I lost, I was there, I'm not dropping out. You got to look at the world as it is and do the best you can. And people can disagree, Hasan, what is the best? How do we go forward? But dropping out is certainly not one of the options.
Feels crazy to have him. Feels crazy to have him keep saying my name.
So I'm 38. A lot of our viewers are around my age. You're 83. We have a long way to go to become your age and to have your wisdom. How should we apply the next decades of our life? We're first generation. A lot of us are first generation kids.
Well, I'm first generation, not a kid. Also, first generation old.
I'm a man. I'm a man now.
So my father came from Poland. I think immediately we got to elect Kamala Harris. But second of all, we have got to keep our eyes on an agenda that speaks to the needs of working people. And by the way, not only is it not a radical agenda, we just discussed how American people support, this exists all over the world.
Right.
I live 50 miles away from Canada. You go in a hospital in Canada for 3 weeks. You know what the bill is when you come out? Do you know? Zero. It's zero.
Yeah.
It's publicly funded.
Nominal, yeah.
It's a human right. And by the way, they spend 50% of what we spend per capita on healthcare. All right. You go to Finland and countries. You know what childcare costs or college education? Virtually free. Because they understand they want a well-educated country. They want the kids to do well. These are not radical ideas. They really are common sense ideas supported by the majority of the American people. So what I'm asking your viewers and your listeners to do is to stay focused on the issue. Don't let politicians get off the hook saying, oh, well, yeah, I want to improve healthcare. Well, what do you mean? Can I go to any doctor that I want without taking out my wallet? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not talking about that. What do you mean by that? Should we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs? Or should we pay what other countries are paying? So be thinking about what you want as the future of this country and demand the politicians deliver it.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much.
This was really great.
Yes, I will be watching the Kamala Harris interview at the top of the hour, okay, when there's a 3-minute ad break. And if you want to also watch it, and there's a Golden Kappa train happening right now as well, all you need to do is subscribe for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. It's coming up. It's coming up right now with Dana Fash. Okay, here's a 3-minute ad break now. If you wanted that uninterrupted, juicy broadcast experience, that's what you need to do. I want Twitch Prime. Filthy capitalist. That's me. I love capitalism. The people are asking for you to interview Bernie. I mean, we can make it happen. I have their number. I'm not gonna lie. The interview kind of knocked the wind out of my sails a little bit.